Hello everyone, welcome to the fresh videocast episode of My Emotions Matter. And given the current onset of the coronavirus pandemic, the education sector has also been hit very hardly. Like, education is considered to be a basic need, but because of the social distancing, schools and educational institutions are bound to shut down and to find alternative mediums like online education at this point of time. And at this point of time, the educators might find it very difficult to connect to their students emotionally, because online platform or online education might not be as engaging or as connecting as physical platforms are. So today we'll be discussing about exactly this topic. Today we'll be talking about how can teachers become more mindful during this time of crisis, and we have invited Mr. Pavitra Gautam, who is the CEO and co-founder of Karkhana, to discuss about this. He's also the executive member of NYEF. Welcome, Pavitra sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Okay, sir. So, beginning the interview, given this onset of the virus was very sudden, and it led to a very sudden change in the education itself. Like, even SEE examinations were cancelled just one day before. So,
Yeah.
how difficult or and challenging was it for the educational institutions to deal with this sudden change? And what can teachers do from their side to support the institutions better during such a time?
I think I think the most important part that we all need to understand at this point is the health is the most important thing. And in that sense, we are all complying to the directive of the government so that we're all safe. And I think that's one of the most important thing that none of us should forget. And of course, making that, we are having to price a lot of there's a lot of cost that we're paying for that, and education sector has had to pay a lot of prices, had to lay I guess for the school level education, the cost has not been too much until now, considering that most of the examination were suggested to be over at the first week of Chait, and most of the schools actually did that. So students in the school, generally from uh, primary level to grade 9, are actually in the vacation period, and usually this time of the year is the vacation period. So the cost for them is not that high. I think the cost is bit more. I think the change has been bit more for SEE students because they were really prepared, mentally prepared to give the examination, and I think the government was also prepared in terms of conducting that examination. The other effects that I've seen of this current situation to the education is in the high school level, where the exams are expected to begin in few weeks, and the government has not made any public notice on that matter. And I think the other challenge is other levels of education, like bachelor's level, undergrad, graduation levels, where the classes are still continuing, and all the education system, all the educational institutions are looking for ways to make it happen. Of course, this change has been pretty drastic, uh, but luckily, in case of Nepal, because the young students are at home, they're supposed to be at home at this time, and I think everyone else beyond that is slightly older, and we can hope that they're a little bit better in handling the situation. So I'd say that until now, the situation is not very difficult, but with each passing day, the situation is getting more and more difficult.
So, my key takeaway from your answer is that at this point of time, in case of the primary level education system, the cost is not very high, because even during the other times, or even during other years, during March, April was a season of break for these students. So now they are in their vacation period, because of which they are not having to face any such difficult challenges. Like, challenges are there, but the difficulty level is lower in case of primary level education. But the cost is really, really high for SEE students, because they were mentally prepared to give their examinations, and suddenly now that it has been called off, it can be very challenging for them. And in case of higher education institutions, we can see them moving towards online medium of education. So
Yes.
now that we see that online education is taking place in case of urban areas, in some cases it might be observable that online education might not be as engaging as sitting in a classroom might be. So what can teachers keep in mind to make sure that even virtual classes are as engaging as a physical classroom, so that students can actually learn better?
Um, I think the big challenge I see in this transformation, in this shift, is the motivation. Because when education happens, I mean, when educational experience is delivered from a facilitator, from a teacher to a students, there are a number of things that are happening. Of course, there's a content part of it, which is the core part of it, right? So there's usually an objective of the entire day, but there's also this classroom management aspect of it, and but there's also this experiential or activity or engagement part of it. And I think when we're talking about online education at the point, I think the large focus is on the content, which is relatively easier, because I think delivering the content from the online medium is not that difficult, and in some ways is actually easier. You can actually explain a lot more complex ideas through videos, through pictures, and I think we already have so much of resources online. The more challenging part I see here is the other part of the education, which is classroom management, uh, experiences, engagement. And at the end of the day, I think a good education is all about this connection between the learner and the facilitator, right? And I think that aspect of education is affected quite a lot.
So my key takeaway from your answer is that while educating students, three aspects are really, really important. One is the content delivery, which is not majorly affected by shifting to the online platforms, because even through the online mediums, the content delivery portion can be done as effectively as in a physical classroom. But what is being affected is the connection between the teacher and the student, and the engagement part, the classroom engagement part, or the experiential learning part is being heavily affected because of the shift to these online platforms. In case
Yes,
of urban areas, moving to online platforms has become easier, but this might not be the case in case of rural areas. And given that
true.
we do not know, it's very uncertain as to when will things settle down or when will things be okay. So what can the rural institutions do, the rural educational institutions do, so that the education of the children from that area is not affected during this peak point of time?
I think one of the language that we are using while having this conversation is we're talking about online education, right? And I think online education and distant education is slightly different ideas, and of course they're similar in so many ways. Or let's say online education is one of the subset of distance education. So at this point of time, when we cannot move around freely, when students are not like we cannot send out students back to school in large groups, we have to look for other ways of rolling on the education, or other ways of keeping the educational experience going on. In that case, of course, in the urban areas or semi-urban areas, the online education has definitely been one of the mediums. So what else can we do in terms of rural areas or other areas where online education is not possible? I think to begin with, we just have to be uh, patient, I guess, because in this crisis, it's not just education; it's a lot more than education that has been affected, and I'm sure that in rural areas the effect might be even more. because there might be other challenges regarding the supplies, regarding the maintenance, and regarding other basic things. Uh, but in the meantime, uh, I think that we should also consider this as an opportunity to explore other ways of engaging with the students. So a few days ago, I was having a conversation with one of the public school teacher, and we're having a conversation of how we can probably engage these kids. And I was asking that, can you actually make like one call a day to one of the like one student? That means like about 40, 50 calls. And I think he was quite excited about that idea, but in the meantime worried, because he was saying that in a single day I usually teach around 100 kids in different classes, and it might not be possible to call all of them. And after some conversation, we discussed about this idea that maybe you can divide the number of calls you have to do among the teachers you have. So maybe you take a grade and you call all the students every day, maybe like not a long conversation, maybe a minute conversation about what are you doing today, what are the things that you're trying to do, how you're engaging yourself in at home. But in this area, in this part of the conversation, we should be aware that you're not trying to get your lessons done in the phone, because a big responsibility of education is to make sure that the kids feel supported, kids feel that they are doing something productive, and they are learning to think. If you are thinking that as the outcome of education, I think just having a phone call, just having few phone calls a day might do a lot of things. And at the end of the day, it's I think kids would feel better that my teacher is worried about me. The kids would feel that, okay, I'll do something today, and tomorrow I have something to explain to my teacher that I did this or I did that. Or if I have some siblings and we combine, could do something, and tomorrow we can report that idea to the teacher. So I think the way we think about education might require a little bit of shift in that sense.
So, my key takeaway from your answer is that at this point of time, we'll have to be very patient, and we'll have to realize that other than education itself, there are various sectors that are being affected by this pandemic. And in the rural areas, the challenges might be even grave. So, maybe what we can do is we can change the definition of education at this point of time. And maybe education is not all about learning lessons or learning a few courses, but it could also be about feeling supported, about having that feeling of support, about learning to think. And maybe teachers could take few simple steps, like maybe calling their students, checking in with their students, checking in with their emotions, so that their students feel supported and their students feel like, okay, my teacher is worried about me. I think that also can be considered as a way of dealing with this. I think that can also be a very productive way of dealing with this pandemic, given that online education might not be possible in the rural areas. So, at this point of time, because of the current onset of the pandemic, students might be feeling very scared, very anxious, as a result of which it might be very difficult for them to concentrate on their education itself. So, what are a few things that you think teachers can do to emotionally connect with their students and help them deal with such difficult emotions?
um, I think not just in this pandemic, or not just in the time of crisis, one of the biggest responsibility of a teacher is to make their students feel safe. um, and in that area, I think one can do a lot if one actually cares about the student. As I said, if you have online access, you could use that online access to send emails and make phone call, make calls, or make do video chat at group. And also, the focus should not be immediately getting into the lessons, but maybe in the beginning of all these interactions, the focus should be on understanding how the child or how the student is feeling. Because when you're because you're moving from one way of teaching learning process to another way of teaching learning process. So the first responsibility should be about uh, making them comfortable about the process, making the conversation or interaction going on. In that case, trying to ask questions like how you're feeling, like how many people are there at home, what are the measures you're taking to keep yourself safe, how are the basic supplies, what are the challenges you're having. So if as a teacher, if as an educator, if you can connect with your student at that level when you can ask this kind of question, I think the person or the student would feel supported or feel safe that okay, someone is out there, except my family, that cares about me and about my family. I think that's the first and fundamental idea of making someone feel safe. And I think when someone feels safe about an interaction, the person opens up, the person starts to think. And I think when you have that kind of relationship and engagement with the student, and I think that then comes your second or third step about maybe like, can you note down all the plants that you see in your surrounding? Can you think of all the science concept that you see in your day-to-day life? Can you try and write a paragraph about how you feel, and how you can convert that feeling into a positive feeling? Can you write one page? Can you do me like, what are the calculation that you have, or can you plan a budget, a very minimal budget of your family spending for the next month? And I think then you can start playing with the current situation or the current affairs and start connecting these ideas into their basic learning of science, math, language, and other ways. And I think when you go deeper and deeper in this way, then it's much more relevant to them. And in the meantime, they're also learning and they're thinking about these issues, I guess.
That's a very, very important key to take away. Like maybe teachers can find out ways to connect with their students emotionally, maybe igniting conversations about how the student is feeling. The emotional conversation should be there between the teacher and the student, so that the student feels connected to his or her teacher, and they might open up about the stress that they are going through. And during this point of time, it's very important that teachers have these conversations with the students so that the students can feel safe. Having said that, at this point of time, when we are moving towards this online system of learning, even the teachers are under great and immense pressure, because this is something that they are having to do for the first time in their lives for many teachers. So what are some challenges that teachers are having to face at this point of time?
I think, as all of us, the biggest challenge is uncertainty, I guess. This uncertain feeling of where we're headed as a community, as an institution, as a nation is quite distressing. Uh, Another challenge that I see is in country like Nepal, where technology is slightly picking up and making a lot of mark in education. A lot of teachers are not comfortable with the technology that's available, or let's say even videos like this is very difficult for them to access. Maybe not that difficult to access, but to create, because of the challenges they have with the familiarity of technology. But there are teachers who have challenges accessing this kind of videos as well. But for people who have access to this kind of videos, I'm sure that if you have access to a technology, then with the right kind of mindset and training, you have access to using that technology for your benefit as well. So I think a big mindset that I see is one should start to not be just the consumers of technology, but start using them and uh, starting creating experiences for themselves and also for their learners. uh, i I think like that.
So according to what I have got from your answer is that at this point of time, one of the biggest challenges for the teachers is the feeling of uncertainty. Like this uncertainty could be building up stress even in the teachers' emotional well-being. Like this stress could be affecting teachers' emotional well-being as well. And at this point of time, maybe a big mindset shift that is required in teachers is the use of technology. For the teachers that are familiar with technology, maybe now they should like try out or explore new ways to become more comfortable with it, so that they can connect to their students through using such mediums. What are some ways that teachers can practice self-care mediums for themselves? Because a teacher is only going to be able to care for his or her students if he or she is well himself or herself. So what are some self-care mediums that teachers can use at this point of time?
um, I think there are a lot of ways. The first one is, I guess, being very careful about the sources of news that you're accessing, because one of the biggest source of stress and anxiety is overseeing the information, right? So just being careful and limiting your exposure to the news and information would help you a lot. And also not supporting the fake ideas, and also always being very critical about the sources of news. I think it helps a lot. Second, I guess, is having an open heart and open mind. Uh, so a few days ago, I was having a conversation about what is difficult and what is not, because it's a mindset, right? If I tell you, or if I tell myself that I have to climb a rock, then it might feel very distressing, considering that I don't want to do that. But if I ask a rock climber to climb that rock, then suddenly it's a fun for the person. So I don't think it's the work that makes the difference, it's the mindset, how we take that work. And for teachers, I think fundamentally they agree to this idea that the biggest responsibility is to educate people. So I think there's this deep desire of learning in themselves too. So I think they have to tap into this deep desire of learning and look around for resources. These resources might come in a lot different forms. A video like this is definitely one of the resource where they start connecting to this idea that, okay, it's just not me that feeling this like stressful, but there are a lot more teachers like me. So maybe it's not abnormal that I'm feeling, and it's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel uh, anxious. It's okay to feel low. Maybe I think after one feels and understands the emotions that they're going through, then only they can start looking for ways to resolve them, right? So I think videos like this definitely help, and I think a lot of reading helps. Not reading in terms of news or misinformation and disinformation focused ideas, but reading a lot of new ideas, new, maybe there's a book that you have already always thought of reading, and maybe once you have read that book, maybe you can actually have that book as the medium of communication with your students. So I think reading helps, going through resources like this video helps. And one has to also understand that there's a lot of organizations that are doing a lot of work to support them. I guess like My Emotions Matter is releasing this series of videos so that they feel emotionally supported. There are a lot more organizations, like talking about my own organization. We have been running this social campaign where we're producing a lot of content that teachers can use, or even students can use to learn at home. We are also producing a lot of support resources for teachers and school leaders, so that they can learn from each other, they can learn from different ideas. We're also listing down all different websites where they can, from some website they can learn content, from certain website they can learn how to use technology. And not just that, we're actually leading a lot of online webinars about how to use technology, how to use different forms of online mediums to engage with your students. So because this is a time of crisis, a lot of people who have these resources are coming out and supporting. And you have to understand that this was not available before. So because of the crisis, there are opportunities that are opened up, and one has to start to be proactive in terms of looking out for this kind of resources, talking to their peers, looking for ways to be productive. And I think once you start to do that, you'll start to convert a lot of your negative emotions to being more of hopeful, being more of joyful in terms of learning new ideas. I think that's very, very important. And I think a couple of more things that helps teachers, particularly teachers, to cope up situation like this is ideas like meditation. So practicing basic meditative practices that starts from like just focusing on your breath for 5 minutes, just like letting yourself feel all the feelings that you have, things like that. And a base, like, I think exercises help. There's a lot of research that suggests that when you exercise, your mental state is also better. So I think warming up, doing a bit of stretches, if you're comfortable with yoga, do that. If you're comfortable with walking, do that. If you're comfortable with skipping, do that. If you're comfortable with, I don't know, like jumping, just do that. So I think some form of physical exercises actually do help in your mental state as well.
Thank you so much, sir. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our audience on being a mindful educator?
I think it all starts with accepting whatever you're feeling, and it's okay if any kind of emotion is difficult. I think if you're feeling afraid, if you're feeling um, anxious, if you're feeling low, depressed, I think accept that feeling to begin with, accept that emotion to begin with, and connect with more people in terms of how to convert that emotion into a more positive emotion. And there are a lot of ways, just like call that person that you want to talk to, or call that person that makes you feel better, or call that person that you think listens to you and gives you positive feedback, or go out there and look for videos. So I think uh, this situation is definitely difficult, and one has to understand that we are all in this together. So we're all in this together, so the idea of together should be there. Of course, we're social distancing. Let's not go to each other's houses, let's not gather around, but there are other ways. And I think until now, as a civilization, we have produced a lot of technology like phones, emails, that we can connect each other with. And honestly, I think it's pretty relevant in villages that you're very connected to your neighbors, but maybe this is also an opportunity for people who are in urban and semi-urban areas to understand and know people in your neighborhood. So like talk to each other from like rooftops, talk to each other from your gardens, talk to each other with in distance. And I think if you learn to do that, if you learn to build a community around yourself in any form possible, in your neighborhood, through your phone, through your technology, I think reach out to your community, a positive community.
Thank you so much. And as you said that it's very important to normalize difficult emotions. At this point of time, it is very, very natural and it is okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel stressed out. It's okay to feel anxious. Normalizing such difficult emotions is very, very important. And as Pavitra sir already stated that this is a time where we need to socially distance, but that feeling of being together should not go away. We are in it together is a feeling that we need to reinforce among ourselves. And at My Emotions Matter too, we help teachers reflect on their emotions and use these emotions in a very productive manner through our program called Reflective Spaces. To know more about our program, you can reach out to us through email. Until then, bye bye, and please, please, please take care of yourself and your family during this time of crisis. We are all in this together. Thank you so much, Pavitra sir, for your time for this video. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.